Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to those who might be waiting to watch out there. We are now ready to call the meeting to order, the June 6th meeting of the HRA Board. We have all four commissioners in place. Commissioner Hansen has been appointed by the county board, but is not able to be with us today. So wherever he is, probably sailing the Yortis. Welcome, Bill, to the board. It's great news. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Does anyone have any comments or questions or a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Commissioner O'Brien, and a second.
I'll second.
Gabler, any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries, the agenda is approved. Then the approval of the May minutes, those were sent out in advance. Any comments or question about the minutes? Or a motion to approve?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Commissioner Gabler, and a second.
I'll second.
O'Brien, any further discussion? All those in favor, aye. All right, the minutes are approved by unanimous vote. Then we have an opportunity for public comment. Is anyone here who would like to make a public comment? There is no one here who would like to make a public comment, so we'll move right along to new business, for which there is someone here. We have before us today the development agreement and the sale of property with and to Switchback Village LLC for the development of multifamily housing. This is indeed a huge milestone for the HRA. The first, we have Resolution 23-9, of which I just read the title. We can make a motion and get it on the table for discussion. If anyone's
I'll move
Commissioner Gabler.
for discussion.
All right, and a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner O'Brien. All right, now, any questions, any discussion? Jason, anything you would like to share?
I will keep it brief, Chair, but just as a recap more for the public, this has been a saga of project, starting last summer in conversations with the city. This is on the property at Gunplant Trail and 5th Avenue West. The resolution is approving 51, no less than 50, but the plan right now is 51 unit construction of multifamily housing. The HRA requested and received approval for a conditional use permit for that property for a multifamily project. And just a couple of key notes, I think. This development agreement requires there will be no short-term rentals on the property. That is not allowed in the agreement. Secondly, 25% or 13 of the units will be rented at a workforce housing rate, which is 80% of the area median income as determined by the state of Minnesota. Other than that, there is an option in the agreement for the developer to purchase additional acreage subject to the normal approvals, and there will be another CUP requested and required by the city. But that is built in the event that this does well and fills up, and it's a good fit for a second edition. As you can see, there are quite a few pages because this is a big document and a lot of detail, but I am happy to stand for any questions, and as you indicated, Chair, Dante Tomasoni with P&R Companies is here to answer questions as well.
So, are there any questions? Maybe just one point of clarification. I'm not sure. Switchback Village, I love that, Switchback Village LLC. But is the working title of the housing still Sawtooth Flats?
No,
Oh, I think you have to turn that on, Dante.
no, Madam Chair. It will be
Did you turn
Switchback
it on?
Village.
It's on, I think.
It's on,
Green light's
okay.
Yep.
No, Madam Chair. The name will be Switchback Village.
It will be Switchback Village. I like that. I think that's fun.
There was another Sawtooth Apartments that I think. our
Oh,
marketing found,
there's,
so that was
yeah,
really
Sawtooth, a lot of Sawtooth
A
stuff.
lot of Sawtooth
so-
up here, yeah.
Yep, yep. Okay. Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, I just have a question. So there's a lot of legalese in here, and it's
Sure is.
difficult for me to read. I want to just verify that we've had a lawyer look this over and draft this document.
Commissioner Hawkins, yes, we have.
Okay.
The
I was-
HRA's attorney has, we worked on this together in concert with the developer, several back and forths, and he has seen this and been a part of the drafting process.
Thank you.
And I would imagine perhaps your attorneys have reviewed it as well?
I was the attorney, and I agree with you, Commissioner
You are
Hawkins.
the attorney?
It may go cross-eyed as well.
Okay.
Call a question.
All right, without any further, Commissioner Doe?
Yeah, are the, just, this is an aside, I suppose, are the lawyers signatories to the document? Or just advising on the document?
No, the lawyers, the attorneys, I believe on the last page or something, it says this document was drafted by whichever attorney. They're not signatories, no, that's
Okay.
the board and then the developer.
All right, so they're not responsible for the document as such?
Well, they're
It's
responsible for the drafting
signatories
of it,
are
but the
responsible.
signatory, correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And that is a unanimous vote of approval of Resolution 23-9, welcoming P&R developers to Cook County.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Good work, Director.
What day are you going to start digging?
As soon as we get the wetlands figured out.
Oh, yeah. And so a serious question about that. If you know, or when you know the timeline, we do have golden shovels. And I've been waiting to take them out. I've been waiting to take them out of the closet, and I would like to put on the calendar for a group of people to get together on the site, including whoever wants to come up from P&R, and celebrate this
We
moment
will
out there.
definitely be doing a groundbreaking, yes.
Okay,
Just
so,
for the public's benefit, Chair, to be clear, the shovels are normal shovels spray painted with gold. The government does not have gold shovels.
I have, can we, if this is a photo op, can we slide that in between bug season somehow?
Well, we were hoping to put a shovel in the ground next week, but, I mean, we were really surprised to find wetlands on a site that is like this. And so there's a chance that it might have some beautiful fall colors to the groundbreaking. So.
So can you give us a little update on the wetlands and where that's at?
So we did the delineation. We found wetlands that would impact the structure, and we're working with our wetland assessor right now to find out how best we can manage it. It goes anywhere between finding some credits, shifting the building structure and the development a little bit, but we're going to work as fast as we can to get those taken care of. So they're based somewhat on how the vegetation grows in the area, and like I said, we were surprised with how steep it is to find any, but there are some spots that, I guess, water pools.
Do you know if underneath the wetlands what's holding the water, moving the water, is it ledge rock or is it boulders? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I know that we found some hard stuff when we did our soil samples. We definitely found rock, but I wasn't sure if it's boulders or
Okay.
or ledge. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
There are, Commissioner, I walked this site with the surveyor, there's definitely ledge rock there in sites. You can see outcroppings of it as you kind of traverse the site, but it's 12 acres, so it's hard to say exactly where.
Yeah.
okay.
Well, you're welcome to, I mean, it's going to be very riveting, Mr. Tomasoni, so you're welcome to stay if you like, but it's up to you.
I would absolutely love to stay. Unfortunately, my wife is on the board of the Northern Lights Foundation, which is a child charity. Her meeting is at 6, and so I have to go play dad. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We look forward to the next steps. All right, the next thing on the agenda is Resolution 23-10, authorizing the Executive Director to enter into an agreement with Hamilton Habitat to provide up to $10,000 per home for the construction and sale of 2 homes to be sold for $250,000 or less. Jason, I'll let you take that one.
Thank you, Chair. This is we hadn't talked about this explicitly, but timing is such that I wanted to make sure we got on the agenda as soon as we could. The short version is Anna Hamilton with Hamilton Habitat reached out to me. The organization had acquired 2 lots in city limits 11th Avenue. If you know where the Homestead property is, the co-op, it's on that same, it's actually, that's an avenue, that's a city street that turns into the co-op. Looks like a private driveway, but it's still a street, public right-of-way. So the two lots are on the east side of that street, and she wanted to, she's running into obviously cost challenges like everyone is. Their objective is to sell homes for $250,000 or less. I appreciate that they're in their mission. They don't need to make a profit. They just don't want to lose money if they can help it. So she reached out to me and asked what could be done, how might be able to, the HRA might be able to help. And so we got to talking, and this seemed to be a pretty good arrangement. Effectively, the resolution or request here is that we act as a gap insurance up to $10,000 for each of the homes. The original projections and the numbers that they have going into this, and they did this last year, and they have a pretty well dialed in the costs at this point. The cost of construction is about $250,000. So this is if the costs exceed that per unit, if they go up to $260,000, we would provide $10,000 of grant assistance so that they can continue to build these homes. I guess for what it's worth, from my perspective, $10,000 for an affordable house is a pretty good deal. They've already acquired the land. One of the reasons that they reached out is because extending the sewer and water up the street is actually, I believe it's $80,000. So it's pretty cost prohibitive. It's adding more than they expected to the overall cost.
Because is it on Second?
Correct, yep. So
And
they have to
not
go all the
on
way up.
11th?
They have to go all the way up 11th and then cut into each site. So this resolution would allow us to ensure that $10,000 of risk basically for either home. If they don't need it, then great, then that's good for everybody. If they do, we have a little bit of a cushion there so that they don't lose too much money. And this is going to be, from their perspective, open book. They'll be sharing with all the costs and certified construction costs with us. And then they would request the funds if needed on a reimbursement basis after the project is complete.
And the funds won't be provided unless the construction of the home is completed and it's ready for occupancy.
Correct.
So we're not advancing the money, we're reimbursing the money.
Correct.
After the fact.
This is only because the intent here is if the home is completed and it's overrun on costs, that we help make up that difference.
After.
The other thing is you saw in the resolution, I included the language that they include in their covenants, because the spirit of this is to provide it for income qualifying households. And life happens, and sometimes folks will buy a home with the intention of staying, and then they leave. And if they do sell it and make profit, right now, Hamilton Habitat gets 50% of that equity profit, and this resolution requires that they would pay 50% of what they get back up into the full amount, so that we can all continue to recycle the funds into housing.
That was clever.
Thank you.
I have a question. You ready for a question?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Because I've talked with Hamilton Habitat a couple times about this, and is there any way, this infrastructure, I've heard other builders in the area talk about the cost of city infrastructure being a real detriment. The land prices are tough, but not insurmountable. Building is tough, but not insurmountable. It's the infrastructure, the power and the water and the sewer. Is there any other source of funding that the city can get, or that we can get through the county or through the HRA from other source to help with infrastructure costs?
Yes, Commissioner, actually, it's sort of a timely question. There are some infrastructure resources that were approved through the legislative session this year. How that's going to be rolled out, no one quite knows. There's a big question mark over all of that right now, how the state's going to be implementing some of those funds or allocating those funds.
But it's coming.
But it's coming. The other thing I think worth noting is we are in the IRRR service territory, and we just had a meeting with my IRRR colleague last week. They're planning on creating a program. They got some funding approved to set aside for housing, potentially to be used for this type of situation, for housing infrastructure. I will say one of the challenges is, like everyone, folks that provide these funds want to leverage them to maximal effect. So 2 houses is really small scale for spending infrastructure dollars. So it's an economies of scale issue. So my hope is, as we're talking with folks like the school district, we can apply for a little more funding pot to get more home sites built. Again, 2 is pretty difficult, but I would suspect 8+ would be more in the wheelhouse of what we look at.
I appreciate that, but I frankly have a hard time with the aspect of quote-unquote "small businesses" being left out of those situations, because there's a lot of small business development going on in the area.
Business is different than housing.
Well,
There is
I'm
infrastructure.
sorry, because what I mean is that the contractors are a business.
Oh,
So
the
I'm talking about housing,
contractors.
yeah, small contractors as a business, they're small business.
Yeah.
Yep.
According, when they file their taxes, they're a small business.
Yep.
And they're left out of so much of this.
Yep.
And it really impacts, and these are local builders, as opposed to, and I really appreciate the larger developers coming in from the outside, I mean, I really do.
Yep, yep.
But I don't see how, I really wish that there was some way that we could leverage the 2-house developers, or the 5-house developers, or the single-house developers, because they all count too.
Yeah.
But they're left out of these.
Well made, and actually, I agree with you, which is why the infrastructure dollars I'm talking about for the school property, for example, hopefully we can work something out with the school district. That is for the infrastructure to build the buildable sites, to get the sites pad ready. I've been talking with 5 builders that are smaller builders to go in and do little smaller 2, 3, 4 house developments. Exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
The ability for them not to need to take on 10. But if we get enough of these smaller local folks, local or otherwise, that can do smaller scale projects, then we can justify that infrastructure investment. What I'm just speaking to is to be able to justify the funding of and the request for infrastructure, to run the infrastructure, we need enough units total to warrant that cost.
That's just the
Yep,
way those
that's-
programs are
Yeah.
set up. There's
Yep.
no real public infrastructure money for one house at a time.
Yep.
It just doesn't exist.
So if I understand, thank you, I appreciate that. So if I'm hearing you, you're saying if we can, the 5 developers, if we can sort of consolidate those 5 into sort of a loosely defined group,
Yeah.
then those numbers of houses might qualify for that kind of help?
Yes, that's yes, and simply put, if we can get their commitment, sort of if we build it, you will build it. If we get the infrastructure funds to build out, let's say 10 lots or whatever the number is, they will sign, they will agree to build a house on each lot that they
Got it.
acquire.
Okay,
That's the spirit of that idea.
Okay.
The trick is, it's a
But
lot.
it has to be like a neighborhood. It's not one house over here and one house over there, and
Well, no, it would be,
Right?
we would think of a new plat in a subdivision.
that's what I mean.
Correct, yep, so the plat,
It's
it would be
not
one plat,
one
no,
house
it'd be a
in
thoughtful
separate-
layout, a designed layout, similar to what we have for Tofty, that concept.
Yeah.
But we would just have multiple people building different houses in that neighborhood.
got it. So it still doesn't be of any assistance to Hamilton Habitat building 2 over here and another builder building 1 or 2 or 3 houses over there, or?
Well, it can be, so part of the impetus for trying this, and it's, as you can imagine, it's very complicated. It's a lot easier to have one person go in and do everything.
No, I agree.
But if we can get enough lots out of the deal, and we get the right funding resources, then we can really substantially reduce the cost of a lot for a Hamilton Habitat project. So instead of I think it was $80,000 that they paid for those 2 lots, we can charge $15,000 a lot or something like
I think
that.
that was just the infrastructure cost, wasn't it?
Also the lot cost.
Okay.
So I think it was both. I think it was about 80 for each of them. So it's 160 just for site costs. So if we can bring down that site cost, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
But it still has to be in a platted
It's got to be
container.
consolidated, it's got to be
It's
lumped together.
still
Yeah,
not
yeah, I
a
got it.
remote location for a bunch of separate houses.
Yep.
Just so we
Yes,
don't
yes, sir.
create
Thank you
any
for making that clear.
expectations
Yeah,
about that.
It's a part of a larger development scheme
Yeah.
that would include multiple builders, basically.
Another small tangent. So in that vein, are there any opportunities that you're aware of for smaller developers to piggyback on the infrastructure that's putting in for the switchback development? I mean,
Sorry, potentially. So they're going to be running the utilities from, I believe they're at Gunflint, up Fifth, and then, cutting into the site. If there are there are a couple of vacant parcels on the east side of Fifth that folks, it would obviously make that a lot more affordable to do a service line into the road
That's what I
as
was
opposed to
thinking,
mains. And then, of course, if there's a further project on the HRA property, then we've already extended the utilities that far. One of the challenges, just really quick, one of the challenges is the sites that have utilities. We seem to run into 2 primary problems. The sites that are buildable and that have utilities aren't available, so people own them or don't want to sell them, or they're already built on. Or there are available sites that don't have the utilities, and then what we're talking about, the infrastructure cost makes it so prohibitive for someone to do a 1 or 2 unit project that they just don't do it. So they might even own the land, but I've looked at a couple of different sites in town, and it was $180,000 to run the utilities to them. Well, then that doesn't make any sense.
Is there any way that the city can get money, as opposed to the builders getting money, that the city can get money
Yes.
to do their own infrastructure and put it to those lots?
Yes, so that's what I was alluding to earlier. There's the state level funding that was passed for housing. So that's our end of the spectrum, right? Then there's the Inflation Reduction Act, and there's other federal monies that are going through the EDA, the federal EDA. There are dollars available for infrastructure projects. But as the chair said, all of those entities want to maximize the output of those dollars. So it's competitive. And for one house there's all rural communities, I was just at that conference last week, all rural communities are struggling with, we don't need this many, we need this many. And the funding wants you to have this many. So it's not impossible, it's just much more difficult to get the funds to do some really small, I would say appropriate scale projects in neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's just too bad.
There have been funds available through IRRB to do that kind of work on a smaller scale than what the federal funds require. But it probably now could have a better opportunity of looking into something like that, because we're here and we can help bring the other parts of the puzzle that you need. Besides money for the infrastructure, you need a developer. And
Right.
the city isn't going to do that work. So it will require a thoughtful process and more, just.
Well, Chair, we run into the same problem too.
Yeah.
In that if we're going to ask the IRRR for infrastructure dollars, we want to make that go as far as we can.
Exactly.
So we can either ask them, 2 times for $40,000, or we can ask them 1 time for $400,000
Yeah.
and get more houses out of the deal. So
Right.
that's the challenge.
It's all, yeah.
So how many lots does the city have that does not have infrastructure in place? That doesn't have, like I
Oh,
see
don't know
these.
off the top of my head.
We don't know, but maybe let's get back to the
Okay, all right.
resolution on the table.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hawkins?
I'm just curious about the city and involvement with the infrastructure costs, and if there had been any discussion about, like assessments, property assessments, to pay it off over time instead of all at once.
Yes, I have, Commissioner, I can tell you that generally cities don't like doing assessments. I haven't found one that really likes doing assessments. It's riskier for them, of course, because then they're putting it on the property, especially for new subdivisions. Because if the property doesn't sell and nothing is built, then, the LLC developer who builds the new plat leaves, and then there's a bunch of.
Are you referring to these Hamilton Habitat?
Well, on that, I'm thinking of
Yeah,
the street that I live
Yep.
on, that I got assessed when they redid the
Yep,
sewer
so that's a Public
lines.
Utility Commission's conversation to have. It is a possibility. One of the challenges, however, is the cost is still there, it's just extended over 10 years or something like that.
Right, I was thinking about,
Making it easier up front, for
Yeah.
sure. Yep, and I recommended even to Anna Hamilton when we talked, hey, you should talk to the city and ask about special, even if we're helping with this, maybe it would be helpful
Still
for her
do
to
that,
do a special
yeah.
assessment if she can. But that's a city and a PUC conversation.
okay,
Good questions.
Commissioner Gabler?
Well, I don't want to drag it out entirely, but normally, cities or counties bond for public improvements like sewers and streets. And that, it seems to me, if there are a bunch of properties in particular locations, getting some bonds sold to put utilities in is kind of the time where you'd see a payback in new housing. And I don't know the city well enough to know the answer to that, but maybe it's the Public Utility Commission or somebody who ought to be looking at that as an investment in, not just the normal investment, trying to take care of their streets, but really to lead some development for housing. It's just a thought, but that's my experience, having talked to a lot of communities and borrowing a lot of money for this kind of stuff. That's, pretty normal. And especially if you can get matching, that would lead to matching funds from IRRB, but, what do I know?
Well, You know a lot,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
That is good for you. That was my motto.
You weren't biased at all, were you? Chair, sorry, one more, and then I'll be done. Just by way of example, we're familiar with the Vesta and Chain project that Chris Skildum is doing. He went to the city and asked for, and I believe that it did pass, approval to apply for, it's kind of a long-winded thing, to apply for assistance to find more assistants. So I believe it's a $5,000 technical assistance grant that the city applied for, so that they could hire somebody, because the city doesn't have the bandwidth or the expertise, so that they could use that $5,000 to find someone who can find more utilities assistance. So
To
the ci-
find big money.
Exactly. So,
Right.
the point of that's to say, their bonding is an option. There are a myriad of different ways that the city could go, but I think one of the challenges is they just don't know what they don't know yet, and they have a whole other litany of things on their list. So it's getting the bandwidth and the resources to even explore that, and the risk that it is to pay for new utilities to property that's not yet available or buildable is a pretty risky endeavor. But there might be smarter locations to do that at. So they're open to it, is my understanding. They're, as a partner, it just hasn't. They're still exploring it.
So maybe there could be some, I don't know whether it makes sense what I'm going to say next, but I'm going to try it. For any members of this board to get together with the city administrator and the PUC or the planning commission or whoever should be at the table and have this kind of conversation and look at how many lots are available to be developed, whether they have infrastructure or not, and what kind of paths forward, like if we all engage together in a thoughtful strategic planning process about that in the future, not,
That is my intent, Chair, with, for
Yeah.
example, the school property.
yes.
We just have to
and
find enough property to make it worthwhile.
to make it
explore
worthwhile,
it.
right, right. But I'm thinking there's other, like, I know there's blocks in the city that, like, when I was at the EDA, I was like, why aren't there any houses there? Because the infrastructure's not there.
Right.
Well, let's put it there.
Yeah.
There's lots on both sides of the street that could have houses, right?
Yep.
So that kind of
It's
thing.
worth having, I think.
Okay.
You're right.
So now, back to the resolution on the table.
Call the question.
All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous.
Chair, who moved and who seconded that?
Gabler and O'Brien.
Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't have that. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It was a while ago.
Yeah. I've written Gable and O'Brien a couple times here, and I don't want to be a broken record on my minutes.
Right. Very good. Best wishes to Hamilton Habitat and much gratitude for
Yes.
their continued good work
Yes.
to provide homes for people one house at a time. Amazing.
Yeah.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is, are some amendments to the bylaws. And if I remember correctly, we need to look at these today and then bring them back to the next meeting in order to amend the bylaws. We can't amend them today. So, I don't know if people have had a chance to review. They were in the packet. Commissioner Gabler?
Well, starting with section 2, I don't have many comments, but it says the office of the HRA is located within the Cook County, strike the, but is located within Cook County and may be changed. I would suggest at least a mailing address, if we no longer are going to have the office at.
P.O. box.
But a P.O. box or something, because that's, the purpose of that would be letting somebody correspond with us who needs to or wants to.
We will have a mailing address, but we won't have it in the bylaws.
Okay,
I don't think it needs to be. It's not a good place for it in the bylaws.
okay.
And the mailing address is
Yeah,
here
yeah,
at
so
the
we're going to
courthouse?
keep the office location, our office address will still be our current office address. But our mailing, it's confusing, but our mailing address is the county. They actually have a mailbox for us, and the EDA and the HRA receive mail here, and they sort it for us and they let us know. So there wasn't a PO box at the time, and I asked the EDA at the time, and they said that's how they do it, so we just were getting mail here.
And do we have access to that space on an as-available basis?
I do, yep,
Okay.
yep, I have a
Okay.
key to it, yep, and I just got it today,
Great.
To the,
to the mail where they put the mail.
to where they put the mail in
But
here.
not to the physical once the lease expires.
Oh, yes, we'll still have access to the building.
To the office where we are now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I provide just a quick update on the office? I think it's on here. Or did we not put it on there?
I don't think it's on the agenda.
Okay, go ahead. It's not on the agenda, but go ahead and do it.
Yeah, this happened
No.
before we sent it out, or after we sent it out.
After?
Yep. The quick update is simply that the chair and I are talking with the EDA, and we've requested to maintain access to that space on an as-needed basis. The EDA requested a monthly payment of $150, and in that case, we would get access to the office, we would have the printer access, we could meet there whenever we need to, and also use it as a mailing address. So that's what we're working on now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Any other comments or questions about the proposed amendments to the bylaws?
That was very straightforward.
Article 3, Section 2 said the chair would sign everything, and we're adding the executive directors can be authorized to sign documents. Adding a finance professional to keep our books once we start having busier bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Soon.
Soon, yeah. All right, so let it be duly noted that we have noticed this, and we'll bring the amendments back to the July meeting for a vote of approval. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please get a hold of Jason and let him know if there's something that comes up for you after today's meeting. Then we have also edits to the job description. So the job description that we used for this is the one that we posted that was used when we were advertising for our first executive director. County Administrator Yorkie has requested that we give this a review and so bring it back to him, because he's looking into, because of our arrangement with the county that we use their system of payroll and benefits, that we should look into whether this position should be included in, if I misspeak, help me out, included in the schedule of steps and grades as other county employees, so that there's understanding of what future compensation could look like, and benefits, and all of the things. This is not a county position, and it wouldn't be making it a county position, but it would more or less put it on the level playing field.
It would align it with.
It will align it with, so, and I don't know if they're also looking at doing that when the EDA selects a new executive director as well, because that position also flows through the same kind of bookkeeping and accounting, and so anyway, that's why we're looking at this. And as you know, when we did Jason's first performance review, in many places, this original document talked about HRA programs. And we don't really have programs, we have projects. So it's been amended to include programs and projects, because chances are, going forward, we'll have both programs and projects. So, any questions or comments about the suggested changes to the position description?
Actually, not to these changes that are in red, but looking at working environment on the last page, it says much of the work of the position will occur in an office. I'd suggest maybe thinking about some of the work of the position may or may not occur in an office, or may not occur in an office. The reality is Jason doesn't spend much time in the office.
Not that office,
and
right?
I
I'm
think,
in an
you know,
office, I'm in my office.
Yeah.
There's an
As a-
office at home, right?
As a job description, it should be a little more accurate than what we originally thought, that's all.
Good catch, thank you.
I just had to I had to smile because of the amount of red ink in the scope of responsibilities to me is an indicator of exceeding expectations.
The chair asked me to look at it, and I made some changes.
That's what I said. You are the most qualified person to tell us what this job is, so tell us. And I appreciate your work on it, and
ma'am.
I'm sure everyone does.
I'd like the idea of the office being adjusted like that. It seems to me like the physical office toggles Jason to a point, geographic point, and really his work takes him to so many meetings and so many different locations
Right.
that he needs to be more mobile than sitting at an office, so to speak. The other question that I have is that I'm wondering about, it seems like the county this is supposed to be an independent of the county.
Mhm.
So the county is doing the accounting as a convenience to us, I think.
They have so far done that.
Yes,
Talk about that.
so, and it certainly is a convenience. To move to the job description, to sort of alignment, as you talked about, bringing it into alignment with other county employees, seems to me to be a step towards, a step away from independence. And that troubles me just a little bit, because it seems to me like this organization is really wanted by the community, and we decided not to do the merger with the EDA because of independence, and it seems like that independence is something that really needs to be safeguarded, even though we have to work with the county and the city and the townships. So my question is does anybody else have that sense about it moving us a bit away from independence from the county?
I could just quickly, we'll get to this. Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Gabler will be talking in the Finance Committee update about this. That came up very much, well, not the independence piece, but the accounting piece came up in our conversation today with Auditor Powers, and we're probably going to be moving away from the county for various reasons that they can get into. One other thing that's worth noting is and I had it later in the agenda, but at the NARO conference that I went to, I was asking the question about the impetus for these job description changes, as the chair said, was this conversation about benefits and how the job has changed and what does it actually look like. We're going to request from our attorney his interpretation of us being defined as a component of the county, which is a statutory reference. The EDA is, for example, that's the category they fall under.
Is a component.
Mhm, yep, it's a technical thing.
Okay.
And if we are, then it's very common with HRAs and EDAs to be a component, which means it's not the county, it's a separate public entity, but it falls underneath the jurisdiction of the county, because we're within the county parameters. But it also creates that separateness that you're talking about. So we're just going to get clarification. When Auditor Powers originally asked that, for some reason, they thought that we didn't qualify as that, but we're going to revisit that.
And I find that language disturbing isn't the right word, but to call it a component of the county, in my mind goes to, oh, it's part of it.
Right,
'Cause
exactly.
a component is part of something.
Right.
But in this case, the legal definition of the word is not a part of the
Yeah.
county. I don't like that word.
Counterintuitive.
I just don't like the word, but the concept remains the same. Legally, it's a separate entity, totally and completely independent, but it's a component of the county. The definition of the legal organization, it's a public body, corporate and politic. So it's a separate, that's the EDA.
It's the same with the
And the HRA. So we just need to know that we're separate, and regardless of the component word, we still need to know that we're separate.
Yeah, well, it also seems like the public image of separateness is important too, because so far the HRA has a great deal of community trust. And if you talk to various people throughout the county government doesn't necessarily have that same level of trust, unfortunately.
give it time.
Yeah, we haven't been
We've
here
been around
long
a
enough.
Well, that's what I'm saying here, So far,
Pretty
so
soon
good.
they won't like us either. Let's keep it as long as possible.
That's
I
right.
agree with you.
Yeah,
Duly
okay,
noted.
all right.
Yep.
Um, I don't know, commissioners, if you have anything to say about that?
It's just a legal reference, and I think it's good to explore and to
Yeah.
discuss, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I would say we will be a component entity, unit of the county, but what is also clear is that if we were part of the county, our financial statements would be consolidated into the county's financial statements, and they won't be. The financial statements will be strictly our own. Typically speaking, the county's job is to approve the levy, a levy increase, and not the budget. And the commissioners approve the budget and the expenditure of the money. And, normally, we like the county, we like the fact that, and they've been gracious enough to be using the county levy, not the HRA levy that is authorized. So at some point, my guess is we'll start seeing that difference come up. It has with most of the other HRAs I've been familiar with. But
Right.
I think you can take some comfort from the fact that this is very typical for HRAs to be a component unit of the county or city, but not consolidated with
Well,
them.
the county's been exceedingly helpful in getting it
Yeah.
established. I mean,
Yeah.
look at what
We wouldn't be
what
here.
Administrator Yorkie went through to get us up and running. It
Yeah.
was pretty remarkable, so yes.
So, all that said, I would entertain a motion to approve the edits to the job description in preparation to forward it on to Administrator Yorkie.
I would make such motion.
All right, and is there a second?
I'll second it.
O'Brien, very good. Any further discussion of the job description edits as proposed? Hearing none, all those signify by saying aye.
Hey,
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for your good work on that. Now, the 2024 budget request is here, and then Finance Committee is later, so is this all gonna, like, merge together, or do you guys want two separate reports, or?
Well, these are two separate things, Chair.
Yeah.
So
Oh, okay.
the Finance Committee today we didn't talk about this. This is on the agenda because very soon we'll be going
We
to.
need to talk about it.
Correct. We'll be
Yeah.
going to the county board to propose a 2024 budget.
Yeah,
And I defer to the board on how we want to do that, what we want that to look like. I didn't want to put anything, you need to talk as a board about what you want that to look like. So I
Yeah.
want to put it on our radar collectively so that I can prepare something to respond to the county with.
yeah, because, our levy request is due this month or next month?
I believe it's due at the end of next month.
At the end of July?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is urgent.
So we do need to talk about what that looks like. As you may all recall, in 2022, the levy request was $125,000. For 2023, the levy request was $125,000. And now going into 2024, I, in my opinion, believe we need to increase our levy request to better prepare us to move forward with good work in the year ahead. I think we might be at a place where we need to think about our administrative needs. You know, we probably need to review the compensation level that we have set for our executive director. Jason should advise us if he sees within in the year of 2024, that he may wish for some administrative assistance or some project management assistance. And we might want to wonder if our levy request should include any funds that we can use to leverage other big money. So, there's a lot to think about there. And I'm
We also,
interested in.
we'll talk about it in the Finance Committee report, but the other new expenses coming down the road, or we expect that we'll be paying for bookkeeping services.
Yep.
We expect we'll need some accounting consulting services to help us set up the books initially, and then auditing services to audit the books at the end of this year. So those are all
Yeah.
new and are not included in the 125,000 that we've been operating under.
So, yeah, right, so far, we've not done a separate audit because our levy is part of the general fund, so I think we were just audited as part of the county's audit.
Right.
Having worked for the EDA, I can tell you that for the EDA itself and Superior National Golf Course, they are audited by the same firm that audits the county, because there's a lot of crossover in how that money flows, where it goes, where it came from, what's it obligated for. And that, the new auditing firm that first did the audit of calendar year 2021, the cost to the EDA was $22,000 or $23,000. It's projected now that perhaps it will be more like $15,000 for the audit. I don't know if we would anticipate about the same thing, probably not, but it depends, I think, also on how many projects we have going and how many sources of funding we have, and so it's kind of hard to predict. And I don't know, I've always, in government, I've always budgeted very conservatively, not overstating what we anticipate to bring in and not understating what we expect to spend, because it's much better to underpromise and overdeliver with the people's money. So, I don't know how you want to begin this.
I mean, some of those numbers, it sounds like we've got a lot of unknowns. You know, you mentioned several. I mean, what is the staffing level going to be for the EDA, for the HRA for the coming, through 2024? What is it actually going to cost for some of these additional services and so forth? And a lot of that information we're in the process of pulling together. My thought is that if we have a deadline of end of July to make a formal request, then we can't wait until the next meeting. Yeah, we need to have some subgroup that's developing a pretty a pretty thorough draft that we can then vote on at the next meeting. But we can't wait till the next meeting to say, well, this is what I found out, and try to slap it together.
No, we need to approve it at our next meeting.
Right.
So is that the finance committee? Or is that not?
It
what
could
you-
be.
Could be, yeah.
But let me say, along those lines, I guess, first of all, I totally agree that this needs to be ready for a vote at the next meeting in July. And we're going to need more money. I'm concerned, looking at this in 2023, we may end up with more expenditures than we have money. This is, I mean, what you come down to at this stage is pretty minimal contingency sitting there. And so that's one issue, is what do we do if that happens? The second issue is, okay, let's get prepared for 2024. You know, we terminated the idea of the EDA and HRA combination. One of the potential benefits for that was a couple of high-level staff people working together, and the synergy of that. And they already had an account or a bookkeeper working on that. And so just that simple decision is probably, once we reflect on it, means, well, we're going to have some bookkeeping service. I mean, right now, Brady does it, and he's very upfront about the fact they have a hard time getting to anything, let alone our business as well as the rest of the county. And so there's one position. And to me, it does not make any sense to have Jason doing this kind of stuff. It's not a good use of his time and his abilities. And So he needs some administrative support at the very least, and to me, I'm thinking half-time position or something like that. But I really don't see how we can continue into 2024 with what we've been getting in 2023 or 2022. And I understand, asking for more money is always an issue. But hopefully we can demonstrate it with a track record and hopefully a groundbreaking or two this year that investment is worth it. And perhaps it's time for the county to look at using the HRA levy or authorizing the HRA levy and maybe not, but that's a county board decision to me. But it's something we ought to be thinking about. And so that's a summary of some high-level thoughts. And but we got to get dollars to those thoughts, and
Right.
I just can't see them being the same dollars that we've been working with. And this year we had some carryover money also from 2022. We only were paying for about half of Jason's time, and that became a carryover fund. And so I just think we got to be realistic here. And I know there's, all politics is local, and these are political decisions, but either we're going to make some investment or potentially lose the opportunities that we've already created, thanks to Jason. So I'll be quiet.
So, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Brien?
Well, I'm just thinking that, the most of the items, if I look at the salaries of the 23 budget, other than the direct project assistance, I don't know how we would, that's outside the 100 the 125. But if I look at the bulk of it is just personnel related costs, and so I think that maybe and the rest I think can be just adjusted with adjusted for inflation. I think, but that's really the big open question is what is the personnel structure of the HRA?
Yes. The compensation and the personnel.
Yeah.
And I would ask, Jason, on this document that you've provided to us, for example, legal counsel at $10,000, that's what we budgeted, but that's not what we spent?
Correct.
So all of this is not spent. The contingency is showing here as 3,500, but there's more.
Well, I get that.
Okay,
but-
I just wanted to say that,
Thanks.
because I needed to clarify for my own.
Yep.
I don't think we've spent all the legal or the financial
No, those are
consultation
reasonable.
or the technical assistance. So there's some other, it's still not a lot of money. I'm not disagreeing
Right.
at all.
And the increase associated with, audit fees and so forth might not be as great, given that we had 10,000
Right.
in there already for financial consultation. So,
Well, and we're saving $3,300 on half a year's rent that we're not going to pay. I mean,
Yep.
that's a contingency
That was,
also.
yep,
I-
intentional.
For what it's worth, Chair and Board, I think for the 23 for technical costs, we can, for lack of a better phrase, limp our way through 23. I think that there's.
With no technical assistance? Is that what you're saying?
Well, for example, the financial cost budget that we had set aside, if it's a consultation for project specific, which is very likely, then we have ARPA money that we can use for that because it's direct development costs associated.
Yeah.
So this wasn't keeping that in mind. So we have some margin there to be able to, and like you said, the $3,500 for contingency and the office recuperation costs. I think we have enough to get the bookkeeping services that we need and start that. The audit will probably be paid for in 2023. So we'll have a little more time there too, because they're going to, or excuse me, 2024 rather. That's,
2024,
for 23 and 22. So I think we'll be able to get through this year, but as we're thinking about the next year, I agree that this is the time to make those decisions. And sorry, Commissioner.
No, go ahead.
You're a real commissioner, you can go before me.
Imposters over there.
I think I'm kind of fluffed up over there.
The real deal.
At this table, you are more real than Commissioner Hawkins.
You have the vote, I don't.
But at another table,
You're right.
Couple things. One is in the, years ago, on a residential building project, a standard contingency was 10%. I'm sure it's more than that now, because a lot of that's changed. A lot of the unknowns have really escalated. So a 10% contingency, it's the only thing I've got to compare with, and that's not, we're not even close to that. The other thing, and I have said from when we first put together a job description, is that this person's gonna need some assistance. It's not fair to have this person do this stuff. And I've said it over and over again, that we have got to get some staff on board to be of assistance. And everybody said the same thing. So we got to put some money in there for it. I don't know what a part-time administrative assistant would be, and I'm not sure what the skill sets are that Jason would need in that. So that's for somebody else to decide. But I know for a fact that we've got to get another staff person. We just have to do that. And the other thing is I really appreciate people being conservative with the people's money. I really appreciate that. There's a certain tipping point of too much conservatism ruins the project. It just dumps over to where it doesn't work. So we have to kind of stay away from that tipping point, and none of us know where it is. So, and with all the stuff that's coming on, I mean, you look at the successes that Jason's pulled together for this first year is remarkable. And we need to maintain that momentum, and it's gonna cost money. We just have to, so I'm reiterating the fact that when it puts a budget together, we need to be judicious, but not too conservative.
So just before we, I don't want to lose this, as we continue to go forward with this new business number 4, letter E, let's call it the levy request, not the budget request.
Yeah.
Because
that's-
it's important that
Yeah.
everybody understands that our levy and our budget are not the same thing.
Thank you.
Good point.
It's,
Good point.
I'm not used to the levy piece still,
right.
after a year.
It's okay, it's only your second time.
Thanks for your grace, Jared, I appreciate that.
At this table.
Yeah, no, yeah. Not on the table.
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your work, and I agree with the sentiment that we need to have a realistic number to bring to the county board. I will tell you my own personal workings with the committees I'm serving on, as I say, do you know the HRA gets less than this? And housing's our number one priority, so I will encourage you to bring forward a budget, put together a budget that is realistic. We know we need to include an audit, we need a bookkeeper, we need to have some sort of, even if we don't hire a support staff right away, we have to have that in the budget, so when it does become necessary, we have the funds available. And I guess I would leave it up to Jason's opinion about what we have set aside for legal and financial and technical.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. This is the first year, we've already done way more than I expected. What's on the horizon? What do you expect for 2024? And let's be realistic of
Right.
setting those numbers. Because, yeah, I think what has already happened is pretty exciting, and it proves the track record that we have been responsible with the taxpayers' dollars, and I think the taxpayers appreciate that and will support a higher levy request to continue that progress.
Okay, good to know. And I just would also, in addition to this clarification, whether the county enables this levy request to continue in the general fund or from a HRA levy is really, it's another one of those, like it's a moot question because the source of the money is still the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's still the taxpayers, it's still the people.
Right.
So, that's just another, a point of clarification, like that word that we were talking about
Okay.
before.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And
Commissioner
I
Sullivan.
just wanted to echo Commissioner Hawkins' remark, housing is our priority, is the priority of the board. It's the priority of our county and the people that live in it. And so keep that in mind.
So Chair, should the Finance Committee plan, if we've, does it sound like the Finance Committee will get together to discuss
Well, if the finance committee is willing to take on this work and prepare something with you to send to the rest of us sooner than later, I think, if the finance committee and Jason put something together and you send it out to everyone, then we can respond to Jason with any thoughts. We can decide at that time if we need to have a special meeting in between. Or if everyone is saying, yeah, this looks good, let's go with it, then we'll bring it to the July meeting. If you're, yes?
That's fine. The one part of the process that's not clear to me is, we talked about, the ED compensation, ED salary, and I don't, I'd rather not just spitball a number from next
He
year.
can tell you what it should be.
I'm staying out.
Let's not put Jason in that
Jason's conflicted.
But it seemed to me that those revisions to his job description were enough to double the salary.
I don't want to get kicked out of town.
So that's why,
So that's where we need a process.
I would say it's really important to get that information to our county administrator, to give us an opportunity to look at county compensation. We have steps, we have grades. It's something different than what this organization has, but it again will give us some type of alignment or ability to look at it in a parallel way.
I also can, tell you that the current salaries of the county administrator and the department heads are public information. I recently received that information from the county.
Yep.
And it doesn't tell us what step or what grade, but it tells us what those positions are currently being paid. So you can use those numbers in thoughtful process.
Okay.
As comparing.
Yeah, no, that's what we have to have some, we have to have a process.
We have to have context here for one
Right.
thing. And
Yeah.
So do you want me to
that's-
send you those numbers again?
Yes,
That'd be
I
that'd be
think I
great.
sent them
Yeah.
earlier, but I'll send them again. Okay.
Chair, I don't want to overcomplicate it. Does it make sense to, maybe I'm going to, does it make sense to have the Finance Committee to meet to talk about, let's say, the rest of the budget?
Yeah.
And then you can hold a brief Personnel Committee after the next meeting, and we can approve the budget subject to,
The levy.
oh gosh, I got to use that. The levy request,
Yeah.
subject to the Personnel Committee's final decision on compensation and employees, such. Does that make sense?
Well, and it's sort of an interesting, because we are proposing a levy request for the coming calendar year, and we won't do the next performance review until the,
Following.
so it's like projecting if things continue to go the way they have, this is what we might do. That's why this steps and grades is maybe helpful, because that sort of predetermines what salaries look like. It doesn't leave it up for performance review, although we did put in our employment agreement that we
Right.
would enable a performance award. So, you're right, Commissioner O'Brien, the process is not clear. It's like we're,
We'll
just do our best we
Take that
can.
information, put together a draft,
Yep.
and then if we need to have a separate meeting to talk about that piece of it, we can do that.
yeah,
And come up with our best collective recommendation.
yeah.
I have another comment too. In terms of some of the legal fees, like the, I can't remember what all it was, but there was some legal consultation.
Yep.
Some of those kinds of fees. Some of that stuff might change once a project is in motion. Right now it's the theoretical aspect of getting a project lined up, those costs are relatively known as you go into it. Once a shovel goes in the ground, things can happen that were unanticipated, which might put a little bit more pressure on those line items. We're looking for outside consultation. So I guess my point is that as we're trying to expand our budget, let's not try to tease a little bit away from this line item to fluff this line item up. You know, the bottom line is the bottom line's got to be more than last year. But I think we need to be really careful until we have some experience with some projects as they go through their process, because that's where some of the unknowns in the building process can pop up. That will be expenses that we'll have to cover. And if it's not.
Or not, you know, depending on,
Well, or not, yes.
you know,
But
we're not developers. We're
No,
the HRA.
but that
so
doesn't prevent some of the legal things
The legal things.
The
yeah.
legal things that we
Well,
will
we'll
be.
have some responsibilities with the IRRB grant, for example, that, you know, we've got some oversight there, and maybe Jason's enough to oversight the thing, but you're making a point that there are, things will come up. And
Yeah, and I think once we have this is a new organization, a new process, and so once we've got a few projects completed, then we might know a little better what it is that some of those unknowns might be in this building climate, in this, you know, in our
Well,
area.
there's that, yeah.
So I think that's, I guess that's what I'm saying, is that there's still a lot of unknowns, and I know that it's really difficult to deal with things that we don't know of yet.
So back to your early comment about us, perhaps a healthier contingency.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so do we have a plan?
Plan.
Be able to go forward? Anything else about the 2024 levy request?
Commissioner,
Dave?
just before we leave, can we, meeting the minds quick to get on a calendar so we can
Sure.
set up, okay, thank you.
All right, appreciate,
Yeah, and I just sent you a request for this copy of the spreadsheet.
Oh,
I can
perfect.
take that and then we can.
I already sent it to you.
Did you?
Yep,
Okay. That was for the, that was this.
it included that as well.
Oh, did it? Okay.
There are tabs, yep.
Good.
Yep, I just, yeah.
All done.
anything else?
The internet's
Could you,
amazing.
could you please be responsive when we ask you for things? Sends them before we ask for it.
I will, I'll get
Kid
on
is
that.
psychic.
Right. All right, good work, everyone. Okay, the next thing is the WTAP underwriting request. Jason received a request from the development director inviting us to consider whether we could become an underwriter. And I think I have to say, based on the discussion that we just had, it doesn't feel like this is something we can engage in at this time. It isn't the highest and best use of the people's money for the HRA. It would be to tell people who we are and what we're doing and how to get a hold of us. And I think we're covered, right? So
We're a
just-
public enough entity,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that's enough,
Okay.
is my view.
we'll just, if you could just let them know that we are not able to do that at this time. Then the next thing is Commissioner Hanson. We mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting. The county board approved his application to serve as the Commissioner District 2. And he will be with us at our next meeting, and that's just a wonderful thing. You've met with him?
I'm going to be meeting with Commissioner Hanson in the next couple of weeks here. We're going to sit down and do a download of all the efforts and get him up to speed. I will bring coffee, I think. A
Couple of pots.
Yeah, right. A Keurig, yeah, on demand.
Yeah.
And he was gracious enough to send me a headshot. So he's on the website, so he's stuck now.
That's great.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, Bill. Thank you very much. All right, then, other business, the director's report. The Sawtooth Flats update. Well, I guess the first update, it's
Switchback Village.
That is a good title.
I love
It's
it.
great.
That's a great name. I like it.
Yeah, we continue to refer to it as Sawtooth Flats up to now because that's what we've been calling it, so for the interest of being clear. Well, they'll be really quick. You already heard about the wetland delineation. I got a draft back late last week. The traffic analysis piece, that was the other concern from the public and from the Planning Commission and Council. I met with, last week sometime, I met with county engineer, the city administrator, and 2 traffic consultants about this. They're drafting a memo. The short version is they're not concerned. And the amount of traffic that's going to be generated, it's like 25% of the threshold that would have to hit for them to consider installing some sort of stop or lighting or something. So it was really helpful to have their perspective that we acknowledge for this community. It's quite a big deal. But they said for traffic writ large, it's not substantial. So that, I'm just waiting on that final memo. As Mr. Tomasoni said earlier, really now we're just waiting on the final orientation of the structure, and then they're going to start, and a finalization of the wetlands from the county's end of things, and then they're going to be submitting the required permits to get those golden shovels in the ground. I'll just.
I have a
Go
question.
ahead.
On that traffic assessment, has that been made public? Because there was a number of folks that really publicly spoke about the difficulty.
Not
with
yet.
that.
Not
It
yet. We're
hasn't
waiting on
been
the final
written
memo.
yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're
okay.
writing it.
Oh, okay.
And then it will be.
But it will be.
Yeah,
So-
I just
so-
want to let the board know that the conversation has been, we looked at all of these things, they're, like, in short, the conditions that are there existed and will exist irrespective of this project.
Okay.
So this project is not going to meaningfully impact the existing
Okay.
conditions.
Yeah.
Yep, and so they'll, as soon as that's ready, I'll send that to the board, and the memo that they have.
And it'll go public so that the public knows that we've addressed that concern.
Yep,
Good, excellent.
and the city will have their comment, and yes, it will be public, and really, at this point, it's kind of under the city's jurisdiction. It was their consultants that they engaged with. It was to
It was their
accommodate their
request,
council's
right?
request, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna
they'll-
save
They'll
it.
take care of it in
Yep.
terms of making it public. Okay.
It'll be there, yeah.
That's kind of we're doing this to accommodate their concerns through the public process,
Great.
through the city.
Yeah.
But we'll have documentation, the same documentations.
It makes me really happy that the citizens' concerns have been really well addressed in this way. That makes me very happy.
Yes, and it's, they don't always go this way, so I'm really glad to hear
Yeah.
sort of what the developer and I intuitively thought, but it's really good to have it vetted by people who do this.
Yeah.
So that's, we wanted to find out for
Yeah.
everybody's sake.
Good.
So I'll keep cruising to the Tati project
Yep.
quickly. I received the wetland delineation earlier, what's today, Tuesday? Yesterday must have been. It's a bit of a blur, sorry.
It's okay, I'm right there, I have like,
Yeah, it's all blurring together. The wetlands were more or less where we thought. So they're going to be working with the county and Mitch Travis to finalize that delineation, and then their objective is to also have shovels in the ground by September. They have to go through the planning office here at the county to do a plat and get the documentation they need for that.
and did we do that development agreement at the last meeting?
Correct.
And the purchase?
Correct.
So they're underway?
They're rock and rolling.
Okay, unbelievable.
Yep, so in September will be potentially a very busy shovel month, I guess.
So that is 20,
No less than 10, up to
10.
24.
okay, depending on
Yep. Yep,
this.
they might do some side-by-side
Right.
townhomes.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's their anticipated completion date? Is that sometime with the houses, will they complete 2024, you think? Or-
I just talked with Peter about this last night. It depends on, so the wetlands are one thing, and then what they're really needing is to have the county approve septic locations.
Okay.
That's kind of the domino that starts the rest. Once they have that, then they can finalize the lots. And so I suspect, again, if they start in September, it depends on how late it is, because, we could get a foot of snow in late October. So their objective is to get the foundations in by the fall, because then if they do that, then they can, these are modulars, so they can still ship them in the wintertime, fix them, and finish them. But if they can't, because it just gets complicated, that's how these things go, then the site will be ready to go, and then come spring, they'll start putting the houses up.
We tried shipping some modular units in.
I heard about this. I heard.
And one of their concerns is they gotta sell lots before they can commit to the modular construction. And so, being ready with the foundations is really key. But it's also gonna be a market test. I mean,
Yep.
they're not putting up 24 units,
Right.
on spec. They really
Right.
need to sell each one, and I don't blame them for being cautious, but let's also be optimistic that, that how the need is there and that, they'll fill it.
They are, I'm sorry. go ahead.
Do they have, I don't remember if I read this or not, do they have a range of price points?
Yes, so the more entry level, which this is it's unfortunate that this is entry level now. But those homes will be 290,000 or less
Okay.
sold.
That's right, okay.
Yep, and then above that, there's going to be some natural limitations to the price points on that
Yeah.
development. I would not expect them going above 450,000, for example, for however large the home is. But, so it'll be in that range.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, so I'll keep folks updated. At this point, again, it's the due diligence stuff that they're working on their end, and I'm in constant communication with all of these folks.
Yeah.
One thing that's not on here, but I just want to let you know, the Schroeder property, the Schroeder, Minnesota Power property, the 40 acres, we have that signed. It's on the desk of the Minnesota Power appropriate person to sign, and then I will start doing, I'm waiting on some final information from them about previous usage, but I'm exploring a phase 1 environmental investigation just to be safe, and seeing what the cost might be for that, and looking at some grant money to get that from the EPA, so
Okay.
if we need it.
And school update?
School update is, like I talked to the board, I think last month, they were reassessing what if we provided 2 units.
Hasn't changed, yeah.
Yep, that hasn't changed because the numbers are still really difficult.
Okay.
Yep.
And I want to mention, I believe you also had a conversation with EDA Board President Serba about a couple of lots on the east side of the Gunflint Trail. Did he not talk to you about this?
Oh, the southeastern lots.
Yeah,
You're talking about the EDA business park lots?
yes.
Yes.
So just to put on the table, we won't make any decision today, but the EDA is interested in hearing from us fairly quickly. And you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this inquiry even, but Steve Serbach called me yesterday, I think it was, and said that those who are EDA board members who are working on Cedar Grove Business Park things talked about the 2 lots as you're going up the Gunflint Trail and the road curves to the left. On the east side, there's 2 lots that we looked at several times for potential assisted living projects. And both of those projects failed because of the cost of the assisted living, not because of the cost of developing structures. Back before 2016, before I came to the EDA, the city council talked about those 2 lots when they did made the lots on the west side of the business park eligible for owner occupied. There was conversation then that these 2 lots on the east side of the Gunflint should be considered for multifamily housing. So now, with the number of lots available at Cedar Grove, that board, the EDA board, is talking about making sure that what is left has a good, positive impact on the community, that it is used for the highest and best purposes. And they want us, the HRA, to let them know if we're interested in those lots, then they would, I believe, I'm kind of putting maybe some words in Steve's mouth right now, but it could be, that land could be like the city land that we received for the P&R development for the Switchback Village, that it could be readily title transferred from the EDA to the HRA for the purpose of housing. And they want to know sooner than later, so.
Do they already have electric, obviously, but they have sewer and water already going up?
Everything is in the
Okay.
Gunflint, yep, sewer, water, fiber, and electric is all right there. As I worked with those 2 developers on the potential assisted living projects, there's a city drainage ditch that flows in between the 2 lots. And one of the developers was going to put the assisted living on one side of the ditch and build a footbridge to put an apartment building for the workers to live on the other side of the ditch. So if this was multifamily housing, there's it's not necessary for the 2 to be connected by a footbridge. They could be 2 standalone buildings on those lots. And one of the things that I learned after those assisted living projects were not able to go forward because of the cost of operating, when you added development and operating, it was going to be way more money than anybody would ever want to pay in Cook County for an assisted living. We discussed the possibility that we should just think of those lots for senior housing. And that then the services could be provided for, by the, the hospital and the clinic and the hub and the Meals on Wheels and the Arrowhead Transportation, that all the services exist in the community, but it might be a good opportunity for people to move, who are staying in their private home longer than they should, get them into a situation with living on one level. So I don't know if anybody else wants to make comments about this right now, or if you want to put it on the agenda for next month, or Commissioner Sullivan.
I can certainly say that I've talked to a number of seniors who have said they would be interested in selling their home to provide family housing for those here in Cook County if they had a place where they could stay in the community. And so this would certainly provide that opportunity.
Right. I think Homestead Cooperative had a waiting list of like 35 people
Yeah.
that wanted to get into one level living over there if when they came over.
Silver Bay had a project, I don't know if they followed through with it or not, but exactly that, where they were building senior housing to get access to those homes to put on the single family market. And I'm not sure where that was, but I thought that was and we've talked about that before, early in the game when we were doing priorities and stuff, so it seems like that would be a great spot.
There are, oh, sorry, Commissioner, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm not sure what the EDA wants, if they just want us to
They
take
want
over
us
the lots.
to know if we're interested
To take over
to
lots and
access to the-
pass through to a developer.
to figure out what to do
What to
with
do with
it.
them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Sounds like our job. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Right?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien?
I
Any?
think it sounds interesting, a great
Okay.
opportunity. I didn't have anything else to add.
Commissioner Hawkins? Jason?
I have one concern,
Yes?
and it is that currently the zoning doesn't allow simply multifamily.
That's correct. It doesn't. But, 10 years ago, then city council said they would amend the zoning to enable that. And I don't think that anyone, I don't know, I better.
I think you better to explore with the city of Grand
Yes.
Marais their willingness
That's-
to change.
Right. So maybe that's our response to the EDA, that we need to get with the city planning and zoning and see if that is approved, then because we don't need land that we can't build housing, right?
Well,
Right.
maybe an option would be an option from the EDA to us to, we'd agree to acquire the property if it can be rezoned.
Yeah.
And that's after a conversation with the city first, but.
Yes, and I believe that was Steve's suggestion to me, that if we're interested, there should be a meeting with Administrator Roth, Steve, me, you, whoever else. So I think we can send back a response to Steve Serba and say, yes, we are interested in exploring, and this is what we see the steps. Okay?
That's great, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make it clear that right now, because it's, otherwise, of course, it'd say, hey, let's jump on it. I want to make sure that we have the ability to change the zoning before we acquire the property.
Yep.
If the EDA is patient to go through that process with us and wait, then I think let's go for it.
Okay.
Just as a quick side note, you reminded me, I'm working with a developer out of Minneapolis, actually St. Louis Park, I think, who is interested in doing some townhomes. And it strikes me that this might be a good location for something like that. It's too small to do multifamily of the scale we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because of the wetlands and the stream, but it might be a nice location to do some side-by-side, single-level townhomes with attached garages or something like that, so.
Is there a way to put a covenant in that would give priority to Cook County homeowners who are selling a house in other words, to try to.
Depending on
Yeah.
the sources of funding for the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And depending on who owns it, so I did some digging with our attorney about that and what kind of restrictions we can and can't do. And my understanding thus far, as is theirs, as is the League of Minnesota Cities, because I talked with them, that if it's an HRA-owned property, we have more jurisdiction to put restrictions like that. If it's a private, like, so if we provide the land and then a private developer owns and sells it, then we
I
have
see.
less ability to do
Got it.
that.
Okay, that makes sense.
If, along that way, if a senior sells their house, if they move into a senior place and they sell their place, is there a way that the HRA could purchase that house as a then put the covenants on it, and then pass it through to private owners?
If we had the capital to do that, yes, we could. It would though depend on the seller's willingness to work with us and not see what they
Right.
could get.
The
Right.
other thing would be, not for us to buy it, but to educate the sellers on the community benefit of putting a deed restriction on their home, that the next person who buys it and on into perpetuity, that the intent is for workforce housing or, not other uses.
So for us to educate the current homeowner to put that on the deed
They
before
can
they
put
sell
it on the deed.
They do it, they take care of
The
that.
seller.
And I think the most
Got it.
expeditious way to do that, honestly, is to talk with the local realtor groups
Yeah.
and educate them to educate their clients. Because some of their we won't know until it hits the market and then
Right.
it's sold. So if we can I'm happy to have conversations with them about, and even provide the language of what it can look like. Really, it's a covenant against short-term rentals. That's I think the most important one. And some of them are happy to do that, and some of them don't want to do that. There's not a lot of incentive, but we can still have a
Other
conversation.
than the
Community
warm
good
and
spirits.
fuzzy
Yes,
feeling
yes,
that you
yes.
get because you've helped out your community, yeah.
But they're leaving the community, so maybe they don't care.
Right.
Well, and the real estate agents have the potential to lose a little bit of income in the situation too. They lose a percentage of their commissions.
Well, so does the homeowner. I
Right.
think realistically,
Everyone.
that's been the real economic issue, is
That's
that
true.
generally VRBO potential can outbid a
Yeah.
homeowner, the family that wants to stay, so.
And the investors are
Right.
coming with cash.
Right.
The market is driving the bus,
Yeah.
so we'll just see where it goes. Maybe it'll.
Okay.
Okay,
Last thing?
Naro.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I'll keep this brief. I am happy to answer any questions anybody has about it. Last week, for a few days, I was in just outside of Grand Rapids at they call it the Spring Symposium for NARO, which is basically the national organization for HRAs and housing authorities and public housing authorities. The short version is I went to try to do some sleuthing, and I've already talked with Commissioners O'Brien and Gabler a little bit about. And we talk about the component piece, because we were looking at the healthcare, and I asked you, we had an executive director, a round table with the smaller HRAs throughout the state, and there are a bunch of different ways to slice it. There are all manners of arrangements that they have. A common one, though, was in the recommendation that I received from somebody who's long been in the business, is to make sure that your auditor is designating the HRA as a component of the county, and then the pass-through of those benefits and payroll is a lot more smooth. And then we maintain that separateness, but then we have there's ostensibly the justification to use the payroll and benefits. And they said the IRS, if we are designated as a component, the IRS says that we're eligible for county benefits.
Okay. And did I not read in this session, did the legislature pass something that was going to change the ability for employers having single employees to allow for insurance policies? I might have dreamt it, I'm not sure.
You have very interesting dreams, Chair.
It's a riveting lifestyle that I have, don't you think?
But they did pass a lot of legislation.
Yes, they
so
did.
Believe me.
They're still sorting through it, so
It could
if
be
it's
down in
there,
there.
we'll find out.
Find
about it.
eventually.
Yeah, I think let's just watch for that, because I just remember reading something that happened during the session and saying, oh, look, this will speak to our needs, whatever that was. So, make a note of that we should follow up. It might have, I don't know.
There was another, there's a public entity insurance, think of like a brokerage or a kind of a mutual fund of insurance providers for public entities, and so a number of them used that. I can't remember the name. I've written it down somewhere, so I'm going to look into that too, just to see what sorts of policies they offer. But for ease sake, if we can we have to do the component thing for other purposes as well, so
Right.
it might just make sense to continue that.
However it works out.
Yep.
Is anyone needing this room at 5 o'clock? Are we going to run into a schedule?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, I've talked with Administrator Yorkie.
Okay.
We're booked from 3 to 5 now,
Okay.
just to be safe.
Okay, very good. I wanted to make sure that we weren't.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then we're ready to move
Yep.
on to the Finance Committee report.
If I can give a quick update. So if you recall, at the last meeting, we included the review of the current finances. So what we've done since then is, Bill and I have reviewed the current format of the financials as presented, also done some benchmarking and looking at the financial reporting for Jason provided the Duluth reporting, and we also found financial reports for HRAs in Red Wing City and also Crow Wing County. County. And the latter is probably a good model for us in that it's it's a bigger county, 67,000 people versus 5, but it's a comparatively simpler reporting format. So I think we've identified some good benchmarks for how we'd like to see the financial reports appear. We have a couple steps to go. We met with Auditor Powers beforehand, and I think reviewed the services that they're currently providing for bookkeeping, and I think we've agreed on a path that we're going to explore retaining using some of that financial services for a bookkeeper to help us to set up the structure of accounts that is more along the lines of what we've seen in other HRAs, which includes fund-based balance sheet, fund-based statement of operations, and then at the same time we want to explore identifying a firm that would be available to do the audit for us for next year, and there may be some overlap in terms of the upfront consulting piece, to be determined whether that's something that the bookkeeper does or something that an auditing firm would do. Bill, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I think the summary, and Kelly was with the auditor as well, the person who does a lot of that work, and they were very upfront about their inability to really handle a lot more stuff than that already, and we all understand how that goes. But I think our proposal would be to put out an RFP and get it approved at the next meeting. It can't be done before then, I guess, but to find an audit firm. There's several firms that do audits of government entities, small places as well as large, and certainly the county's auditor is one that we would put on the list, because it may be that they're the natural one, but I'd like to see that in relation to other firms, and it's possible they'd be the only one who would propose. I mean, I'm not predisposing anything here, but I just think it's our opportunity to see what is going on, and I know the EDA picked Redpath, the same firm, and for good reasons, but and I think the ballpark figures, we're looking at 15 to 20 grand to accomplish this stuff is probably in the ballpark. Won't need to be spending the audit money till next year, but we really need a set of accounts set up that we can now be funneling our expenses and income into through the bookkeeper. So it's all kind of a part of a package, but I think the key is get going with an RFP for audit firms and to see how that works.
So that would be for an audit firm to do the audit of 2024.
Would it be done in
In 2024,
2024, but for
the-
2020?
2020.
And I think you'd have to, they'd
This
have
is,
to
wait,
include.
this is 2023 right now, right?
Yes.
So wouldn't we be already in the county's audit for 2023 since it's still inside the auditor's office in 2023?
But we might be switching, if we switch bookkeeping services.
Oh,
and we have
before
more-
the end of the
Correct.
year, you
Correct.
think you're going to make this transition?
Yes.
And I really think, given, the acquisition of property was a big watermark for us. And I think we just need to get this going on our own. And, to the extent the auditor in his office could be helpful, we want to rely on that. But we're going to need our own bank, and we're going to need our own auditor. And the audit, when it's done according to GASB on the HRA, may have to go back and include 2022, may not, I don't know. That's the reason to get an RFP going. But I think there's a lot of work to be done here, but we need to start now because I just know we don't want to get to the end of the year and what are our books and, all that. Where's all that documentation we need? We've got to get on top of it. So that's what we'll ask the board to do next meeting is approve an RFP for audit services. I think that was the main thing. Yeah. Jason, anything?
Could you,
had,
for public viewing, could you explain RFP?
request for proposals?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to, we don't want to, we don't know what the market price is, and
Yeah.
so that would allow us to review hopefully a
Sure.
number, more than one firm would provide the scope of services they could provide, and what they would charge for those services. And that would,
I like your sense of sooner the better. Because the acquisition of property all of a sudden has put us in a whole different ballgame.
yeah.
Yeah,
And we'll be acquiring more, so.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Acquiring and selling, both.
Correct.
Right.
So if I'm hearing you right, we're looking at an auditing firm and a bookkeeper.
Correct.
And anything else?
A bank account.
A bank.
A bank.
And about the bank account, one thing that I'm sure that the auditor's office will work with us through that process. So far in our history, the county has held the funds that were approved for the HRA. When the property taxes are due, the first half are due in May 15th, when we pay in our property taxes, then the EDA would receive its first half levy allocation in about July. And then the same thing happens when the citizens pay the second half in October. Then in December comes another levy check from the county. And then in about January or February would come a smaller amount that would be from those taxpayers who paid late, or who's, had adjustments or whatever. So I'm not saying that there's anything bad about this, but you need to be aware of it for cash flow purposes.
Right, that's probably separate from the formal financial statements, but it's nevertheless useful to have a pro forma cash flow statement.
Exactly, so we understand that we can make payroll on payday again.
So if I'm hearing that the revenues coming in from the county might not be at the same time that we've got monies going out.
They're lumpy.
Yeah, we
So
have
there might
to,
be a switcheroonie there.
Right
We
now,
have
we
to
get it
do,
when we need it, but
Yeah.
that won't be the case going forward.
Yeah,
And right now, the county has of course, the access to their general fund, or they have cash accounts, then, they know the money's coming in, and they can make those,
Right.
they can cover those costs and then reimburse them, they can interfund
yeah.
transfers.
And we're not gonna have, so let me ask this question, does the county have any issue with us having a bank as opposed to the county
No.
holding the
No.
funds? There's no
No.
issue around that,
No.
okay.
No.
So, but when that happens, we don't have the county slush fund, and if we don't
Correct.
have our own slush fund, we could get into trouble.
We just have to
As
know.
long as the county's willing to front us some of the money,
We're gonna go for a loan, huh?
Yeah, well, essentially, I mean,
can't.
it's an intergovernmental, deal. It isn't
Okay.
the end of the world, but At some point, I'm sure we're going to want to be on the process of getting the money as the county gets it and.
Okay.
Managing our own.
Yeah, managing our own affairs.
Yeah.
Right, you don't, yeah, we used to need assistance with cash flow, but it's better to
Yeah.
get to the place where you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In short, it's going to be a long breakup or like
So-
a Minnesota goodbye. It's just going to take a little while to say goodbye to the accounting services. And we'll be communicating quite a bit with Brady's office.
Yeah. We're very lucky, we have
Yes.
excellent staff in the auditor's office, including the auditor himself. So,
Reminds us that it's the same staff he had in 1991 or something.
Same level of staffing, yeah.
The same number of staff. He said a few more hours, 35 to 40, they've increased, but, and he did acknowledge technology would help. But it
yeah.
was, he knew the years.
Yeah. That's very quick for him.
He's very impressive.
okay, excellent. Thank you, Finance Committee, for your time and for your report. Any other questions or comments for them? Then the last thing on the agenda is commissioner items, and with my name is performance-based compensation, and I wish I could remember what I was going to say about that.
This is per your request, Chair. I'm not
I
sure. That's been
know.
put on. I think it was the Personnel Committee had met
I
last
think the
month.
Personnel Committee met, and we did create the employment agreement. We executed the agreement. We included in the agreement that the executive director could be eligible for a cost of living increase and a performance-based award. And we did approve at the last meeting, did we approve the cost of living? Or is that what I'm supposed to be remembering today? Let me see if I can,
I'm not sure that we approved that yet.
is that?
Did we?
Is the thing,
I think that was the intent of putting
I
something
think
on the
that's what we
agenda.
have to do today.
Yeah.
I'm so apologize for my, it's been a while.
I get kicked out of those meetings,
I
Chair, so
think
I'm not
we,
sure
yes,
exactly.
we went into closed session at the last
Right.
meeting. So that's what we need to do today,
Yeah.
is, for the record, I would entertain a motion to approve a cost of living increase for Jason of 8.7%, which was the federal cost of living adjustment for 2023, retroactive to January 1st of 2023, which effectively increases,
Point of order, Chair. I think that was already done at the last meeting. The COLA was already approved
it was?
in May. I believe that was already discussed and
Oh, then Commissioner Gabler, you asked for a additional closed session for personnel. Yes, you're right. Okay, I'm sorry. I am, okay.
approved. If you want to do another 8.7, I don't want to stop you, but I do want to stop
That
you.
guy's quick.
So perhaps, do you remember, Commissioner Gabler, what we were going to do in addition to the
Yeah, a
COLA?
performance.
A performance
Enhancement, or whatever you call it,
award
award.
of
Now that we,
$1,000?
$3,000.
Entertaining a motion to approve
Okay.
a performance award for Jason's first year with the HRA of $3,000.
I'll move approval.
Commissioner Gabler moves. Is there a second?
Second.
O'Brien seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And again, I apologize for my,
You're doing good.
what?
You're doing
What
good.
did we say a month ago?
Who's on first?
Well, there was a bell ringing in my head, and it kept saying 3,000. But I didn't put it into context that we'd approved one part of his compensation, but not the second aspect of it,
Well-
so.
Thank you,
I was
Gordon.
trying
In
to
spite
hear-
of
I was
my-
trying to hear it through aloud.
Oh, that's right, you were in the
Loud
Spencer.
coffee shop.
Oh, you were in the coffee
You were in
shop.
Arizona, if I recall.
Yeah.
All
that's
right, well, other than the stumbly leadership of the board chair, I think this was a great meeting. Thank you all very much. A motion to adjourn. Are any other business?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Other commissioner
No,
items?
sorry.
No? Did I miss something?
No, meeting was me.
You're good? Any other commissioner items? I apologize again for my... All right, then, a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn today.
And a second?
Your turn.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Please turn off the camera before Mary talks anymore.
You're allowed some faux pas and grace, I think.
Motion to adjourn doesn't have to be,
Thank you.
there's some,
I don't know.
You can sometimes just adjourn by
Thank you, James.
consensus, but,
Yeah,
yeah, thank you.
do you want to meet virtually for the finance committee? Would that work? We could pull up the spreadsheet that way on the, okay.
I mean, that's great.
I will maybe just send out some proposed times, and then, or is there, I mean, if you already know now, we can do it now, or we can do it later, it's up to you.
About, and make sure you do the
If you have your
homework
calendars handy.
before
I kind
going
of
to the
remember my
planning
calendar. I'm
commission.
waiting for one thing that